remember that day like anyone. I heard the news on my radio. My mother called and said your brother's son is somewhere in the city and we just don't know. So I drove like hell back to Jersey to pick up my dad and strike out to find my brother who we still had not heard from. Then we headed up Highway 109. Well, we got as far as Hoboken and we saw that skyline smoking. Then a call came through on my mobile phone. I said, hey brother, we're coming to take you home. So I put a flag atop my car and I put spare change in collection jars. And I watch the news with a poison hate, and for justice to this day I wait. So I'll just say thanks to all of you who did brave things I didn't do. And I'll shed a tear for all who mourn, and to every child that's since been born. Learn about your history. Fear is your greatest enemy. Hang on to your liberty. Bite the hand of tyranny. And here's one last word of advice. You'll know the time to sacrifice. Ask the ghost of any hero if you go down to ground zero. That's the ghost of any hero if you go down to ground zero. That's the ghost of any hero if you go down to ground zero.
September 10th, I had just come off for vacation, and I was in Pennsylvania Dutch, and I actually got home midnight. So I literally went into my house, went into the shower, got all my uniform stuff out ready because I have a 5:30 shift, so I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I laid it down for about 2 or 3 hours to get up and go right back to work on September 11th.
I was living in the city, and every night before I went to sleep, because I had a really great view of the Twin Towers, so I could lay in my bed, and right between my feet were the Twin Towers. So I would see the twinkling lights and imagine the people working there. The night before, I got in very late. I had a rehearsal, and we kind of goofed around afterwards. So I probably went to sleep about 4 a.m., which is unusual. Which was really usual for me to be up that late.
The night before 9/11, unfortunately, I was at work because I handled the international settlements, and I had to work on a very large trade with Hong Kong, and having to work on their time frame, which were hours difference from us, I was there until 9:30, 10 o'clock. And I since realized I was by myself in the department. However, it was not unusual of me to take on the task of doing or going the extra mile. And nothing unusual. I knew there were securities downstairs, so there was no fear. I had my business done. I took a cab home. And it seemed a regular night. It was actually my sister's birthday.
The night before was just like any other night. September 10th was Monday night. It was unremarkable, normal, and not particularly unusual in any way. There was absolutely no sense of anything different that was going to happen.
Preparing to go to work the next day, I actually, in January of 2001, I adopted a little boy. And it was difficult for me to take him to daycare, hop on the train, go to work, worry about getting back on the train, getting him in time. So it was always like a plan in my head how I was going to do this. That's really the most that I think that I could remember the night before.
Interestingly enough, I do recall a little bit about the 10th of September in 2001, and it had a big impact on me because I became, through my work with the Fire Safety Education Program, I became a substitute teacher. I am a college graduate, not an education major, and on September 10th, 2001, it was a proud moment for me. I returned to Tottenville High School, where I was a student, as a substitute teacher.
It was a rainy day, and finished up my normal 11-hour work days and got home roughly around 7 o'clock, 7:30, and sat down, had dinner. There were talks of the weather clearing for tomorrow, and so that was nice. Wouldn't have to walk in the rain.
I'm at work, and I think about the night before 9/11 quite a bit. I was working at 24, the night into the day. So I get to the firehouse Monday night for 6 o'clock tour till the next evening at 6 o'clock. But yeah, I changed my mutual around so that I had to see my cardiologist about something. And I had to take my kids to school Monday. It might have been the first day of school, I'm not sure, at the elementary school. We had several runs that night, nothing big, just going in, going out. Great place. I knew the next day we had building inspection. I had everything pulled out for that. I had all my T's crossed and my I's dotted. And I was wondering when I was going to be getting promoted. I figured I'd be maybe promoted by the end of the year or early next year.
I don't really remember clearly, but from what I could recollect, it was just a regular normal night, me coming home from work, taking care of the children, my sister being there babysitting. She always babysat for the children since they've been very young. Actually, since they've been newborn, right after maternity leave, I would go back to work. Just a regular routine night, nothing different, nothing. It was just regular. I took care of the children, I put the baby to sleep, and my son, he was pretty small, toddler, and I had a newborn daughter. And just putting them to sleep, it was just like nothing. I didn't feel anything different, you know, nothing out of the norm.
Well, since I did work that day, I probably just had a very uneventful evening of going to bed a little bit early in preparation for my next day's work, but I don't recall anything out of the norm whatsoever at that particular time.
On September 10th, I was preparing for another work day in New York City, and I had just been reassigned from one division of the company I worked for, which was Frankel & Company, insurance brokers, to another division.
Yeah, I was working, I worked for a corporate actions firm. They did corporate reorganization, so we were taking on a big job, and I remember everyone was called, you know, all hands on deck, and we'd actually agreed the night before to come to work an hour earlier. So that's something that definitely, wow. It's definitely something that that I remember.
The night before 9/11, it was just another night, watching TV, having dinner, going to bed early. We didn't do anything that was of very big interest, just a regular night for us.
Getting ready for my daughter's first day of pre-K. I don't remember specifics, but just getting ready for her first day of pre-K.
Yeah, that's one of those weird things that it always pops up into my head. It was raining cats and dogs. And the thing that always sticks in my mind is that I had left the Trade Center and gone over to where I catch my bus. I'd gotten on the bus, and right when I sat down on the bus, I remembered that I had left a gift that I had bought for my cousin's baby shower in my cubicle. And I was just like, no big deal, I'll bring it home tomorrow. And that's just one of those things that always kind of like pops back up in my head, because it's like, I guess it's that sense of like tomorrow never came type thing, you know? And but that's the thing that always sticks in my head about the Monday night before, was that it was raining really hard and that I was supposed to bring home this gift and I didn't, and my last thought about it was, I'll get it tomorrow.
Well, it's the beginning of the school year, so I'm a school teacher. Not really. I don't really remember. I was probably watching Monday Night Football and...
Nothing really, just hanging out at home. Didn't go anywhere. Didn't work. Was doing the next day.
It was the first week of school. I was 8th grade. I was my last year at the school I was at. I was excited. We were the big kids on campus now. We were ready to rule the school. I was excited to go to school. I wanted it to be over. I wanted to move on. But other than that, normal school night, everything was as it's supposed to be.
The night before 9/11, that's life before 9/11, so it's a totally different world. You just didn't realize it. But for me, I was living up north of the city, about 50 miles away, on a beautiful lake. And Monday night was our drill nights at our fire department, so I went to drill. You know, normally we were doing, I believe, a mass casualty drill, so it's pretty ironic. And, you know, just doing our thing, helping to train the younger guys, and hanging out with the guys afterwards, you know, friends, hugging each other, and, you know, all right, see you guys tomorrow. And back to the lake, and it was just a beautiful evening, you know, surrounded by friends. The night before was a gorgeous night, you know, just like the next morning was beautiful sunshine day. That night was just a crisp, nice day in the country. And, you know, I didn't have many cares, you know, other than enjoying my life right then, you know, so.
Absolutely. I worked for a virtual health system, and I was working a 911 ambulance, response ambulance. Took an extra shift for somebody, 4:30 in the morning to 11:30 in the afternoon, and I was in the middle of that shift when we got the page, and so I will never forget where I was.
It was remarkably beautiful. A clear day, there wasn't a cloud in sight. So the cold front for that September, it wasn't really cold, but it's a cold front nonetheless, had cleared the air of all of the pollutants, so you could see forever, clearly and sharply. I guess the pilots have two ways of telling you what that sky looked like. CAVU is one of them, C-A-V-U, clear air, visibility unlimited. Or severe clear is the other phrase they use. So you could see forever.
It was this beautiful, extremely clear, perfect day. It could not be more perfect. Crisp, clear, you felt invigorated. Very happy day, you know, very good day.
And it was a beautiful day. The sun was out, there wasn't a cloud in the sky, it was dry, sunny, crystal clear, perfect late summer day. And my thought was, you know, how much better could it get than this?
As far as the weather, was a gorgeous day, the best day you could have ever seen. It was visibility. I said to myself, why am I going to work and I could go to the beach? It was beautiful. Spend the day with my children.
Like the guy said, low humidity, absolutely drop dead gorgeous day. I remember got my coffee in the morning, and I didn't like to hang out too much in the kitchen because that's the guy's area. I'd like to stop in, just show my face and do some chit-chatting and stuff like that, but then I'd take care of my stuff in the office.
It was a beautiful day. It was a very nice day. It was clear skies, with just maybe a puff or two of wind, just enough to comfort you.
And it was just a beautiful, lovely, gorgeous Tuesday morning, absolutely normal, except that I was going in early.
I could remember, you know, how clear a day it was and how beautiful a day it was and how there was nothing you couldn't see from the Staten Island side.
It was such a gorgeous day. We were hiding underneath the trees because it was starting to get a little bit warm, and in the ambulance you can get warm very quick, and I hate air conditioning. I'd rather have fresh air than air conditioning.
September 11th, 2001 was a beautiful blue sky day. It was unusually beautiful, and I noticed that. In addition, it was a primary voting election day, and so the polls were open and some people were going to vote before they would go to work or conduct their daily activities. It was also the first day of school for some school systems, and so as a result, the offices perhaps were a little bit less filled with people at the time of the attack. As the events unfolded, they really came from out of the blue, and that's literally and figuratively speaking. When these planes entered the tower number 1, the North Tower, it was right out of the blue sky. No one could ever have anticipated. And in fact, when it occurred, it was incomprehensible what had happened.
Well, my normal get-up time was around 3:30, 3:45 in the morning. Allowed me time to leisurely get prepared in the bathroom, of course, with the shaving and showering and whatnot. Walk down to the train station. Get there normally around 5 o'clock. Gave me plenty of time to start reading the paper. About 25 minutes trip into Newark and transferring to the PATH train. The PATH train is operated by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. And of course, my destination would be the World Trade Center, which was another 22-minute trip.
I got up at about 5:15 in the morning, like I always did. I was getting ready for work. Was preparing my lunch, like I did every day. I had everything all set up, and I pulled this outfit out of the closet, and I said, "This is good. I'll wear a shirt under this pantsuit because it's going to be cold when I come out." Put my sneakers on, kissed my husband goodbye, and said, "Okay, honey, I'll call you when I get to work, and then I'll call you when I leave from work." Got on the PATH train and came into the World Trade Center like I'd done every other morning.
I'd been up since 2:30 that morning, got dressed and went to work, and was watching, I remember, I Love Lucy.
My husband was on the shift that day that he would go and report it in at 6 a.m. And then if somebody called out sick, he would cover their shift.
Yep, getting up, going to work, getting my son ready for daycare, leave him off, get on the train.
I took the number 1 subway, 7th Avenue line, as usual. There was a stop within the concourse of the World Trade Center.
Just a regular day. I used to take the subway in from Penn Station, come into the World Trade Center, take the elevator up. I remember seeing one of my neighbors who didn't make it.
I start my day by coming up through the basement areas out of the PATH station, which is inside the World Trade Center itself. I would always check the doors there and work my way through an access control door, do a little scan and review of what's going on downstairs, make sure the security functions are working properly there. Then work my way up the elevator into the lobby. The lobby visitor desks are just starting to come on duty. They started around 6 o'clock in the morning.
I took the express bus into Manhattan like I usually did at the time, and there was a big delay. Everybody was delayed that morning, and apparently I got to work late. Usually I would get there by, what was it, like an 8:30, 8:15, whatever. I got there maybe 20 minutes late. The Brooklyn Battery Tunnel was packed, bumper to bumper that morning. So I know afterwards everybody said they were late, a lot of people.
Driving up the Parkway, taking my 40-minute ride to the firehouse, and same routine every morning. You come in, how you doing, guys? And you sit down at the table and you have your morning coffee, and the TV is on.
On Tuesday morning, the 11th, I had woken up, was making coffee at the time. The dog wanted out, took care of the dog. Got back to the coffee, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine, a battalion chief in New York City named Ray Downey. Ray was the battalion commander for the Special Operations Team for FDNY, and I had been doing work with him earlier in the summer at the Trade Center, using different devices to raise equipment to the upper floors that firefighters needed, rather than them having to carry it up the stairwells. And it was an interesting project because it involved lifts that the firefighters would carry to the upper floors, and we used the elevator shafts.
Normally, I roll into work like around, well, I used to roll into work at around 9:30, and then I would stay till like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And because it was the first day of classes, everybody needed to be in early to get everything set up. So I was kind of dragging that morning because I'm not used to getting in that early. But, I got on the bus. I would take the bus and get off basically right in front of Century 21 and walk through the plaza. There was the farmer's market that was going on that morning, and I stopped and I bought a loaf of bread from the Amish bakers, and I put it in my backpack, which also had my computer in it.
That day I decided I was going to take the 4-5 down, and I took the 4-5 down to Wall Street, walked down Pine Street to my office at Wall Street Plaza.
Everything was normal. Getting up that morning, I remember I wore a blue crisp blue shirt, blue skirt. I took the bus as usual. I remember passing by my favorite restaurant, saying hello to the lady that was standing outside, the waitress, and took my bus and went to work on a normal Tuesday morning. Nothing unusual.
I didn't want to go to work because it was such a gorgeous day, so I found a reason to play hooky. And literally, living on the lake, the fish were calling me to go fish it, so I went out on a little boat and, cast the rod a couple of times, caught like a couple of nice big mouth bass.
I live on Staten Island. I was working at a high school that was directly across from the World Trade Center. It's the furthest point you could be, right next to the Staten Island Ferry, McKee High School. We're up on the top of a hillside, and I could remember coming down Victory Boulevard, the main hill, going down before you go up again. Went to work. I was one of the deans of the school. So I was working in the cafeteria at the time for late breakfast, early lunch, whatever it was.
Yeah, it was a typical morning. My father was at work and he called every morning, and apparently I remember answering the phone. He asked, did I get called to substitute teach, because he was on his way home. And I was like, nope, all right, have a good day, see you later, love you. Same thing any morning would be. My mom dropped my brother and I off at school. My mom, she also works for the Board of Education. She's a para, so she went. Our school, where we were, was only 5 minutes away from where she was. So she dropped us off at school, and it was a normal morning until, we switched classes. I was in math class at the time.
My middle girl, Jackie, said, Daddy, you have to take me to school today. It's picture day. I said, well, get your rear end moving. It's 7:30. I got to be at work at 9. I dropped her off at school at 8. Beautiful day.
I got to work about 7:30 that day. As I was busying myself on the phone with a gentleman from our London office, we made a connection to Brooke from Cantor Fitzgerald to resolve the very same trade that I was working on the night before.
So I proceeded. I went to the office and I followed the signs for Tower 2. And just as I'm doing right now, I pulled out my ID. And on the reverse side is the barcode that you put over the scanner. So it scans you in. I get off the elevator. I went to my desk, just like I did. It was around 8 o'clock in the morning. And I put my pocketbook down, like I have here. I put it down.
This particular morning, we were scheduled to make a demonstration of 9 new doors on the observation deck that we had just put security access control systems in place on them. And we were going to demonstrate them to the manager of the obs deck for his approval to bring them into the system and turn them on for 24-hour duty. So approximately 8 o'clock, the systems administrator and I went up to the observation deck, which is somewhere between the 108th floor and the 110th floor in the roof line, to make sure that those doors were working. And that when we went to make the demonstration at 10 o'clock, we would have no problems at all.
You get there, and as much of a hassle as it was in the morning, just going up that escalator and seeing Welcome to the World Trade Center was just, it was like a gush, you know, it was a good feeling.
As I'm walking into the building, I'm looking up at the building, I'm saying, oh my God, look how giant this building is. I've only been working here 6 months. And I always felt kind of, I don't know, I can't explain it. Even the day I went for the interview, something was just giving me, honest to God, I just got this feeling like, don't work here. I don't know why. It sounds crazy. I just got a feeling of being very eerie. It wasn't right. I can't explain it. Anyway, that feeling came back to me that morning, and I was only in there 6 months. I still got that feeling here and there throughout the 6 months, but this morning was different.
So I, stopped at the farmer's market, I went through the plaza, and I went into the mezzanine area, just like I always did, go downstairs, show my pass, get on the elevator, go upstairs. And my company was on the 17th floor in the South Tower. We used to always complain, I was going to use a different word, but we used to always complain about the fact that we had no view whatsoever. I mean, we could look out our windows and see the plaza, and that was it. But on that day, it turned out to be a really good thing that we were on a low floor.
I proceeded along with everybody else and towards Tower 2 to the 36th floor. Frankel occupied the entire 36th floor and half of the 35th floor. And on the way up the stairs towards Tower 2, there was this young musician who would play great violin music. And that morning he was playing Mozart, and I stopped for like a minute just to listen. I'm thinking, okay, Mozart, send down your good vibes.
Perhaps there were, roughly speaking, a third of the staff were present. We had a significant staff, 4 floors, 79th floor, 80, 81, and 82. I was on the top floor of our 4 floor on 82nd floor.
I had my cup of coffee from the Roach Coach, and then I went upstairs, started my day, sifting through files upon files to see which files were valid to keep for study.
Went in, it was nothing. Made coffee, stood around, chit-chatted with my colleagues, and then, started just getting into work.
Getting coffee, going upstairs, I wore sneakers to work and put my shoes on and went over to talk to a coworker that day. I had a picture of my son that I took at home and wanted to show her, so I was talking to her at that time.
And I went and I sat at my desk, and I logged on to my computer, and the funny thing was I didn't put my pocketbook in my bag, in my drawer, like I usually do. I left it on the floor. And then I'm just logging in.
Probably about 8:15 or 8:30, thereabouts. And as usual, I just turned on my computer, reading email, and as I had done for many years and still do to this day, I was enjoying cinnamon raisin bagel and a cup of coffee as I watched or I looked at my screen and did email and maybe read some papers in my inbox. It was very quiet, unremarkable.
Normally in the mornings, we have a 9 o'clock group meeting with the management. So I get ready for that. I get in about 8:30. I used to take off my shoes, get my coffee, drink my coffee. And then usually at about 5 or 10 to 9, my friend Brian would come down. He's also one of the senior managers. And then we'd go into the morning meeting, which was in a conference room, 2 offices from where I was. And I was on the 79th floor.
I had a nice routine in my life. I was waking up every morning at 6 a.m., no alarm clock, feeling good and ready to go. I looked forward to each day and going to work and doing a good job. And I remember taking the the boat, the Staten Island ferry into Manhattan. I was on the 8 o'clock boat. The boat tied up in Manhattan at 8:30, and I got on the subway to go uptown, a couple of short stops, and when I exited the subway at Houston Street at 8:45, things took a very big change.
Yeah, dispatcher. Yes? This is off-duty firefighter Jermaine. I guess you got this already. You got a plane crashed into the World Trade Center. You aware of that? You have a plane that crashed into the World Trade Center in Manhattan? World Trade Center in Manhattan. Where are you going from? I'm on Varus Street in Manhattan. Varus Street in Manhattan. The North Tower, World Trade Center. North Tower? North Tower. You got... And the phone number you're calling from? I'm on a cell phone. I'm an off-duty firefighter. My name is Jermaine. Okay. It's the North Tower, Beachy Street. You got Beachy Street side. Okay, thanks a lot. Send them all because you got major fire on the upper floors of the World Trade Center.
We heard something on the regular radio that plane went into the Twin Towers, and I just looked at Jen. I said, turn the shit off. I said, this is just not even funny. So the radios are all blaring at this point saying there's an MCI, which is a mass casualty incident at the World Trade Center, and it was a small plane into the tower.
I watched, my pager went off. It was 8:46 that we were paged out exactly when the first tower was struck. Called my supervisor and he said, we already have somebody en route. Go home, get your dog.
I looked up and I saw this huge hole in the side of the building. I didn't expect to see that big of a hole. I was astounded by it. I had worked in the building for 5 years and knew that many floors meant that was a tremendous hole. And if that was coming out that way, I could imagine that, even the incoming hole would be tremendous.
We felt this rumble. The building started to shake a little bit. We sort of looked at each other and said, what the hell was that? And about that time, the radios went off. We've just been hit by an airplane, Tower 1. Big fireball, huge explosion. There's flames and smoke all over the place. There's debris falling. There are papers all over the place.
When the first plane hit, it woke me up. So I was actually asleep. But I didn't know that's what it was. And I looked around and I thought that something had happened, but I really hadn't heard anything. And then I looked out past my toes and I saw an amazing amount of smoke. And went to the window, and when you're that close, it looked completely different than on television, which I didn't turn on, because you could see the flames. The flames were 3, 4, 5 stories high behind the windows.
At that point, there was, which looked like the sun that was going to come through our window. It was the explosion from the other building. I basically saw that and just ran to the next stairway and just headed on down. Shaking like you cannot believe, not knowing what happened. Nobody knew. Nobody was rushing, running. They were walking fast down 92 flights of stairs.
I stepped off the elevator, and it must have been right at 8:46, because when I stepped off the elevator on my floor, and what I heard sounded like they had dropped something heavy upstairs.
And I hear bang, bang, and I felt the building sway. And then I look up, and I see the nose of an airline plane come through the tower across the plaza.
I heard a blast it was about 7:45 or 8:45. And all of a sudden, all my phone and Brooke said, what the hell was that? And I was like, I don't know. And I felt the building went to the left and came back to the right. And my coworker, Chris, pulled me and said, get down, we've been bombed.
And then I continued to just, head into the office. But before I could even get into the office proper, people started coming out of the office saying that a bomb had gone off somewhere.
But then at about 1:45 or thereabouts, heard something, and you looked out the window and you saw the people just scurrying out. And they looked like ants coming out of the ground. And then I saw papers flying around, so it was obvious. We didn't know what happened, but it was obvious something happened. The building rocked. Like in a train, you know, when a train center comes to stop, and that's what it felt like. And that's when I think everybody changed.
Somehow became aware that something had happened. This was just after 8:46 a.m. when the first plane entered tower number 1. I looked out the window, and what I thought I saw was confetti rising, going up. And I thought this strange. What I later realized was this was not confetti. These were 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, but the enormity of and the scale of the buildings made it appear as though these were just small pieces of paper. And I could see that tower number 1 was on fire, and I could see the enormity and the extent of the damage.
I felt a little jerk at the table at my desk, and then the guy sitting next to me said, me and both said at the same time, what was that? It was a little jerk. And then all of a sudden we felt a big, and that's when Peter, one of the guys we worked with, said, under the desk. That's all I heard. And I jumped under my desk.
And I just sat there and I thought, hey, wait a minute. I didn't sign up for this. What the hell is going on? So we all got up and we all went like this. How'd they do that? Dear God, how stupid are you? You can't see a 100-story building? What's the matter with you, you idiot? And we just stood there like fascinated. We didn't know what to do.
I just remember looking up, and a gentleman by the name of John Yehovas comes running out of his office. His booming voice said, Caroline, turn up the volume. The World Trade Center's just been hit or something.
A few minutes later, I was pulled from under the desk, and the securities came up, and they said that it was a minor accident. There was a plane hit the roof of the building. However, don't panic. At the time, nobody knew whether it was a bomb or it was just the minor accident on top of the roof. By then you started smelling this burning and rubber, and just I do now smell this hairy smell of burning of hair and everything. And people started panicking, then all the sprinklers went off and you were wet. Some of us, I personally don't know if I had peed on myself or it's from the water that was now coming down on us.
And we're just running down the stairs and I'm going, oh my God, what's going on? And I'm smelling smoke. I'm smelling like fire. All of a sudden, I'm telling you, even before I ran down the stairs, there was smoke immediately all over. Anyway, I'm running down the stairs. I'm going, oh my God, what is this? Maybe it's an earthquake. What is it? You know, I just didn't understand it. And I'm saying to myself, oh God, you know, I want to get out of this. I'm pleading with God, give me 20 more years. I don't care. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do. I'm going down and I see a firefighters coming up, and I said to my, you know, they're going up with the hoses on their shoulders, and a firefighter's coming up. A fire captain with a suit on is coming up with an axe. I'm saying, my God, why is he coming up? Usually they're down at the bottom, but I said to myself, my God, it must be very bad up there. They look petrified. When I tell you petrified, knowing that they were petrified, I'm saying to myself, what am I supposed to think? So I said to one of the firemen, I said, what's going on up there? He goes, you don't want to know? Just get out of the building.
I had been there in '93, and I didn't go out right away, and I regretted it. That was a real bad experience in '93. So I decided to leave, and I started down the stairs, very calm. We got to the 44th floor, which in the World Trade Center was one of the sky lobbies, and the personnel there, security or the building personnel, were telling people to get out the stairs and go on the sky lobby and go back to your offices. They told us a plane hit World Trade Center 1, and that we were safer in the building, that there was debris falling down. So we all started getting on the 44th floor, but there was a mass of people in the sky lobby, and then just something inside of me just said, I want to get to the ground floor. Again, I think remembering how I felt in 1993. So I just started going against the traffic. Everybody was, and I just kept on going down the stairs.
We just had a plane crash into the upper floor of the World Trade Center, transmit a second alarm, and start relocating companies into the area.
The World Trade Center, tower number 1 is on fire. The whole outside of the building, there was just a huge explosion.
They had determined that a plane had struck tower number 1 and that emergency help was on the way. But at that time, we had no sense of why a plane had entered tower number 1, or was it, you know, a small helicopter or some other type of accident, similar to what had happened at the Empire State Building when a plane actually entered, purely accidentally, one of the upper floors.
And over the loudspeaker, because one of the teachers, her daughter was working in Lower Manhattan, so over the speaker they said, there's been an accident in Manhattan, there's nothing to worry about, we're just letting the teachers know everything's okay. And thought nothing of it. Then, slowly but surely, kids were being called out of school, little by little by little, and it just got a little bit more bizarre, and we were just a little bit more concerned.
As I came in, I heard them talking about, you know, something was happening at the World Trade Center, like there was it looks like a small plane and this and that, and I'm looking at the building on the news, and I was like, I know that city, I grew up in Queens. It just didn't look like it was a small plane, and then I'm thinking, well, did the guy have a heart attack? I mean, it must have been a bigger plane, and he must have accidentally veered in, and they're explaining this thing.
As I'm coming up to the top of the Verrazano, I saw the smoke. I said, well, maybe it's a pier fire, because you would get your pier fires in Brooklyn or Manhattan, and it's all black smoke. When I got to the top, I saw the North Tower was burning. Put on the news, and they said it was a small plane. Crashed into it.
You know, people on the street are saying a plane hit Tower 1. And that was when I first looked up and saw that there's all this smoke pouring out of Tower 1.
Initially, we didn't know what was going on. We really didn't. We had no idea.
When I exited the subway, for the first time, I could see with my eyes what had happened. I looked up and I could see the towers on fire, aflame. Horrific, terrible. I knew that people must have been killed, and I knew this was an event of great significance, so much so that my first thought was to watch, because this is history happening, and I would witness history, I would watch it. But perhaps my instincts and my need to survive got the better part of my judgment, which in retrospect was the right thing, and I thought, no, I think I will just get as far away from here as I can.
I know my first take on it was, well, no major airliner or anything is going to crash into the World Trade Center. It was probably some errant, smaller plane or some private pilot or whatever. But in looking at it, the damage was a bit significant. Don't forget, we're getting the first pictures coming in, so the smoke wasn't really at its full billowing at the time, and so it could have possibly been a smaller plane, and that's the take we're all trying to have on it. The thought of terrorism or anything like that, not even in our minds. It was an accident. So as we continue to watch, it does start looking really bad.
I remember hearing on the news, something went into the World Trade Center. It's some pictures from a traffic helicopter of, you know, like the side of the building, the side of the North Tower. And at the time, you could see a little flame, and they said, no, they think maybe a small plane went into it. And the first thing I thought was, I bet that ultralight guy from a week before lost control and went into the side of the building. And I was thinking, no big deal, you know, it's just a little bit on the outside. And the angles they showed of the North Tower, and the TV clips that I saw quickly, didn't look like much. And they came across second alarm on the voice alarm, second alarm in Manhattan, box 8087. And the running joke in some of the busier areas is when you have a high-rise fire in Manhattan, it's kind of like a garbage pail fire or something like that, because the buildings are so complicated that even a small smoke condition is a major thing in an occupied building of 10 or 20,000 people. Then you hit third alarm, you know, fourth alarm, and then the pictures were coming in on the news because it was on every station. And you could see, like, whoa, this thing's really cooking. And it's tough to get perspective on a building that large. Truck got the alarm. I think they went on the north. They were assigned early, maybe a third alarm on the north tower. That was if the first building was hit. They took off because it's a double house, the engine and truck.
Engine 1 out of Manhattan. Engine 1 out, World Trade Center, 1060. Send every available ambulance, everything you got to World Trade Center now.
At that point, we took off and we headed down to the main highway. And as we got onto the highway, 2 other fire department units were going past us. I think that's the first time that we saw the one tower burning. The second plane had not hit at that point.
When I emerged from the subway at Houston Street in Varick, which is 1 mile north of the Trade Center, I heard a woman say, "Look at the fire." So, being in the business, I instinctively looked up. I did not see the impact of the plane, but I witnessed the result of it probably moments after impact. I had a perfect view from 1 mile north of, looking directly down at the north tower, which the plane impacted the north face of the north tower in the upper floors. So I witnessed a fireball hundreds of feet in the air. I witnessed the structure of the building punctured, probably 15 floors high from up to down, and a huge fire coming out of it. I knew exactly what it was. Even though I didn't see the plane, you would think, oh, it was an accident, it was a small plane. I knew exactly what it was. I had been there for the previous attack in 1993. I was on duty and responded that day. And my greatest fear was, what if they ever took these towers down? I went into emergency mode immediately upon seeing what happened, and instinctively, I called the dispatcher directly, and I was giving him a report of what I saw. And evidently, since I called direct, that was one of the first calls the department received. The dispatcher wasn't even aware of what I was talking about, so I repeated myself. And as I was giving that call, I could hear in the background the noise of the police horses, the horses from the mounted unit, which were located nearby, were responding. I could hear the clip-clop of the horses, I could hear ambulances, and I heard from around the corner, from my location, engine 24, ladder 5, I could hear them turning out onto quarters, out of quarters to respond. So I knew what we were up against, right from the get-go.
Send them all because you got major fire on the upper floors of the World Trade Center.
We had a large fire to fight, and we had a great possibility of losing a lot of people, especially at that time in the morning. I had worked there, and I remember seeing thousands and thousands of people coming in that Trade Center from the path train alone. Panic must have struck in. Certainly the people upstairs were dead.
I got onto the elevator, and this is building 2, of course, and when I got downstairs, there wasn't anybody in the lobby. And when I walked through the revolving doors to walk through the concourse area to run over to building 1, there wasn't anybody in sight. Now this is 8:45 in the morning, and normally we have thousands of people roaming around, coming and going, either transiting through the area or getting from where they stopped off to pick up their breakfast and to get to the elevators to go into their building and whatnot. As I make my way down, I see that the lights are out as I get closer to building 1. And when I got very close to it, the huge hanging signs that would tell you where to go, here for Path, there for Tower 2, somewhere to go to World Financial, etc. These are very large stainless steel signs, and they're all bent and twisted. And as I get around the corner, There are no lights now except the security lights and the sunshine that's coming in through the windows. All the sprinkler heads are spewing water. And I stopped and I looked. Now I know what happened. You know, what had happened was that fireball that had come down through the elevator shafts had bounced around the lobby, swung around the lobby, and came right through the revolving doors. And that heat melted the fuses, and so now the water is spilling all over the place. So I took a couple of showers getting into the revolving doors, got in and started with the evacuation plan, which was to send everybody out towards West Street, because that's where we would normally have the first responders coming. The fire department, ambulance corps from the various hospitals, or from the EMTs that would come in, police. And so I'm sending them out that way because if they're going to need treatment, they're going to be triaged as soon as they hit that area. But shortly after doing that, a fireman comes up to me and tells me, "Sir, it's not a good idea to send them out that way. It would be better if you sent them through the concourse up to Church Street." Now, the reason it was going to be better, and he told me it was dangerous out there or unsafe, was that some of the people that were trapped above the impact point, you know, the plane hit around the 93rd floor, and 2 or 3 floors above it were heavily damaged. But in doing so, the plane took out all of their escape routes, the stairways, the elevators. They were all taken out by the impact of that aircraft. And they had only one more option, because if they weren't burned to death, killed on impact, or suffocating from the smoke, they had one more option. You make your peace with God, and you take that other option, or you stay with one of the other options. And that last option was to jump.
There was a guard, security personnel from the building that was advising people to return to their workstation. Do not go down to the plaza area. Do not exit the building. It was a terrible, tragic misjudgment, but the reason was ostensibly to protect those from debris that was falling down because of the plane that had struck Tower Number 1. There was a moment of inner thought. I doubted that that would be the right thing to do, to return to my office. After all, I'm a New Yorker. I'm a survivor. I have an instinct that says if something has happened nearby, like a fire or any sort of potential problem, get as far away from it as you can. What would I be doing? Going back to my office and sitting down and writing emails? I mean, it was inconceivable anyway that I would just go back and continue my work. But that all happened in just a few seconds. I was thinking, I don't think so. And then I felt the second plane enter the tower I was in, and I felt the building shake. I felt it move, and I knew instantly this was not an accident. This was an attack. This was a terrorist attack. And I thought the building may collapse at that moment, and I thought this might be the end of my life.
It still wasn't, the pulse wasn't beating too hard yet at that point. And then one of the guys, I guess the house watchman, came running in, and he goes, "The South Tower was just hit. I saw the plane fly right up the East River, or the Hudson River part is there." And he goes, "We're under attack. It's a terrorist attack." And I have to tell you, I felt like I got hit in the head with a hammer. I was like, why didn't I see this? What was I thinking? And I was like, wow, really? And then we really started focusing on the news. But then we got the response ticket to go. We were assigned on the 5th alarm for the South Tower.
Yeah, I'm on the FDR drive. Definitely something hit the second tower. Approximately 2/3 of the way up. You got visible fires showing out there. suggest to the incident commander, Fort David, to transmit a fifth alarm to Tower 2. Brooklyn to Manhattan with an urgent.
Stand by and let's urgent. Manhattan calling call Fort David, K. Manhattan calling call Fort David.
It just fucking hit it! Another plane just hit it! Oh my god, Hussein! Hussein, what the hell is going on? Hussein, this is an act of sabotage! Hussein, did you see what I just saw?
One more plane going there. Man, what's wrong with these guys?
Hussein, it's gotta be sabotage! Hussein, it's got to be sabotage!
Jim, I saw the plane going there and I was laughing at it.
No, it did. It just hit. Another plane just went right into it, Hussein.
Man, I saw the plane. It went into the other building.
Hussein, it sounded... My God. Hussein, this is a terrorist act. You know that, don't you?
I just thought, look at the guy who...
Hussein, I'll tell you what. Hussein, we're probably going to be there's going to be other targets all over the country today. We're being attacked, my friends. This is it.
The second plane looked like it was actually coming toward us. Very, very low. Me and him looked at each other and were like, what is going on here? And we watched the second jet tilt and make a U-turn almost directly over the building we were at. And we watched it heading toward the towers. Neither one of us could believe it. We watched and watched, and sure enough, I was on the rooftop of the building when the second jet hit the second tower.
The second plane hit while I was inside the building, so I didn't see the second plane at all, and I knew nothing of a second plane until I went home and was watching the whole thing played out on television.
And while I was talking to him, the second plane hit. And it was a 60-story fireball that came at me. And it was astounding, and I couldn't speak. And so I just said, I have to call you up, and turn the phone off. And I think I couldn't hardly make any phone calls after that, because then my phone went dead.
And the plane hit right in our 4 floors. I think that my friend, based on the facts that I know, and some personal facts I don't want to talk about because his wife told me, but he was instantly hit. He was at his desk, and when the plane hit, so I think it was instantaneous. There was no,
When we were watching the screen when the second tower was struck, and that's when people really started freaking out, but in a really organized way, in a way of, I need to get out of here. I would rather take my chances somewhere else than to just be a sitting duck. And that was really the mentality.
By this time here, the second plane does hit. We know it's an act of terrorism, and it takes on a whole new complexion at this particular time.
But I can assume that out of the many things that I felt and heard, there were a series of them that probably took place around 9:03. The ground shuddered. The building groaned like I have never heard it groan before. And I get another radio message. It says, "We've been hit by a plane. Tower 2, blah, 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 blah." And I'm saying, wait a minute. Say that again. Tower 2. And I said, okay. I can't accept that. I cannot reconcile or accept the fact that there's a possibility of a second plane hitting.
But at that point, I also, not only was everything kind of like rumbling, but there was this noise that sounded like a freight train, really, but it was coming from the sky. And I remember looking up and looking to my left because that's where the sound was coming from. And I was expecting it to be, I don't know, a helicopter or something because, you know, the other building's on fire, so there's got to be people, you know, coming to rescue people. And what I saw was Flight 175, and it looked like it was going to hit the building that we were standing right in front of, and then it kind of like did this dipping turn, like right at the last second, and then slammed into the tower that we had just come out of. Up until this point, I'd been thinking that it had been an accident, you know, and it had to be the pilot had a heart attack because it was a clear blue sky, so you can't get lost or miss the building. So it was obviously a little Cessna type thing, and the pilot had a heart attack. But when I saw that massive plane come and like turn on its side and just go into the building, the concussion from that knocked me off my feet, and I was bigger than I am now, so that's, you know, not an easy thing to do. But I was laying on the ground and looking up, and in my brain said that was not an accident, and I got up and I started to move like I have never in my life moved before. I'm not built for speed.
Just then this very handsome young fireman walked toward us. And he saw me in the doorway. He spotted me. And he looked at me and he said, "Lady, take your two friends, and I want you to go through the concourse, through tower number 5, which would lead you to Church Street. Once you get to Church Street, just go in that direction." He said, "Because look what's happened." And I looked out and I saw the plaza filled with steel and glass and concrete, and I thought, oh no. So I said, "Come on, Regina, come on." And just as I finished that statement, Tower 2 was hit. And I felt the ground shake under my feet, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is like the earthquake. And I looked at this watch, and it was exactly 9:03.
I think when we got on the 60th floor was when the plane hit our building. And it shook, definitely felt the building shake. Now people are running down the stairs. There's coffee spilled on the staircase, trying to get down. And these two men looked at me and said, "If you want to see your son, we need to get out of here." And they literally, arm for arm, pulled me down those stairs till we got to the bottom. If it wasn't for them, I would never be here today.
But when that when the second tower was struck, that's when it really came over us. Like, it was one of those literally, oh shit moments. Are we dead? Am I having an out-of-body experience that I somehow know that I'm going to die today? And I don't want to.
In the time from I left the museum to the time that I arrived at the scene, there was another impact, which I was not aware of. So now the incident became twice as large. It was already enormous. I knew when I saw the impact, I knew there was going to be many, many deaths. I knew there was going to be many civilian deaths. I knew a lot of firefighters were going to die. I knew that when I saw it.
Got in the ambulance, backed out, started heading down Broadway, came around by Battery Park to come up West Side Highway again. And it was a sight I've never, ever experienced in my life. Tornado doesn't quite cut it. Earthquake really doesn't cut it either. It was just atrocious. There was things burning, there was things on fire, there were things in smoke, there were debris, things were all over the place. It made no sense. You're trying to, fathom this in your mind, and you can't, because this is nothing I've ever experienced. I was a volunteer firefighter in my local fire department, but I have never seen a scene like this. And at that point, I ran over someone's leg, foot all the way up to the hip. I knew it was the left leg just by the way it was positioned. And I turned to Jen at that point and I said, I just ran over someone's leg. And there was kind of a disbelief in her face, and I said, no, I just ran over someone's leg. It wasn't a mannequin. This was someone's leg.
We started going down West Street, and we're looking right at the North Tower. The people jumping on the North Tower like crazy. You know, you could see where the plane went in on the north side. We were approaching the North Tower from the north side. I remember coming across a turnout coat laying in the street, and it looked like it had been cut to shreds, and it was covered with blood. And it had turned out, I believe it was Danny Surtham, 216, got hit with a jumper. And his company grabbed him and eventually took him to the hospital, but the coat was like laying there, like it looked like it exploded. And there was, you know, I don't want to say there were body parts all over, because it was just debris, and at that point, the bodies hitting the ground weren't. I told the guys, watch out, keep your head up so we don't get hit by a jumper. And I remember an aircraft tire on the street, giant aircraft tire. And I remember seeing debris and glass and stuff like that you see in an office, and body parts. I remember seeing a woman's calf from the knee down with a high heel shoe still on it. And it was just like, it was surreal. It was from here down. And a nice calf and a high heel pump on it. And it was just sitting there like a prop.
I was waiting there. You hear the young kids, you know, look at this. And it was the poor souls, you know, jumping. And I didn't want to look, because you knew that they were in their last seconds of life.
So many horrible things. There was jumpers coming around us. The ground was littered with body parts. It was pretty horrible. I was traumatized.
I was standing there and I'm looking outside, and it literally made no sense. I mean, my brain could not wrap itself around what it was seeing, and so my brain was saying things and stuff, you know, and that's really, it was like things that were falling, stuff that was falling, and it didn't make any sense. And it was the noises that my brain kind of was more focused on than what I was seeing, because I think I'm more of an oral person than a visual person. And suddenly I realized that, you know, I was seeing paper in the air, and I was seeing things crashing down and making these big crashing noises, and they were like on fire, and there was smoke. It was like things that made big crashing noises and things that made these like almost like big popping explosions. What I realized is that I was seeing pieces of the building, probably pieces of airplane, but at the time all I thought of was pieces of the building that were on fire. And then I realized that I was also seeing people. I know for me, that's when I started to that was the first time I panicked. I mean, flat out just panicked.
We just got caught up, and the people are chained and jumping and, you know, shaking your head like, don't jump, don't jump, don't jump. But in your head, you know, you're thinking, well, suffocate, burn to death, or jump. None of them are a good choice, but I don't think I would want to suffocate, and I don't think I would want to burn to death, so I would jump.
We would eventually end up out there, but now I'm on this outside looking, and you wonder what horrors people are experiencing. Your heart goes out to them. You can't even imagine what was probably going on. And I remember going up on this little hilly section of the city and looking out, and I could see the World Trade Center pretty big, and it was about that big to me. And I remember I held my hand out like this, and I put the World Trade Center in my hand. And I said, my God, if I had the power to just take those people and rescue them and do something for them from here, what are they experience over there? What I'm hearing on my radio over here, what is this? This is the most incredible thing that I have ever seen in my life.
We were about to go back into the building, and all hell broke loose.
This is an EMS worker. There's been a major collapse. We need additional units forthwith. Tower 2 has had a major explosion and what appears to be a complete collapse surrounding the entire area. There's been a major collapse in the tower. The command center out here, everybody it was a major collapse. I'm in my rig right now.
The South Tower now is starting to implode. The fireball is following us, so we're running away from a fireball towards Financial One. The fireball hit Financial One, sheared a part of it completely off, and the area we were in, that section entombed us with all the debris that was coming off of the South Tower as it was imploding. At this point, we're buried alive. There's no way out.
Somewhere in proximity to the plaza of the South Tower, en route to entering the South Tower, when the building started to collapse. The building that was hit second collapsed first, so it went faster than the North Tower.
And being in Tower 2, now everybody thinks Tower 1 went. Tower 2 went first. Tower 2 went first, then Tower 1. And that was like mind-blowing. I mean, we thought it would be the other way around, and I knew something was wrong. It was a perfectly calm day, and all of a sudden I feel the building sway, and I hear, and if you've been in a skyscraper, when it sways, it sounds like, you know, a horror movie with the coffin opening and then the coffin closing. It's what it sounds like.
At that point was when the first tower, our tower, started to come down. And I thought, this is it, I'm gonna die here. So I started to run.
And then we get this great trembling thing, you know, going on. And it's building 2 coming down. I said to myself, my God, you know. And then it came over the radio, our radios, that, the building 2 came down. And we were ordered to evacuate.
Came back out, and I just started taking some pictures when the first of the buildings started to fall. And the person I know standing right next to me fell to the earth. And you could hear this noise that came from everyone, this sound. And then it hit, and then you heard the rumble go through the subway. Actually, this one black fellow walked through the park and yelled, "The white man's world is coming down." And people turned to him and yelled, "Fuck you!" And it was like this moment where, because everyone was like half dead. There's this whole, you couldn't imagine how many people were dying right now, and it would be lost.
But I never thought it would collapse that way. I always, in my mind, pictured the building kind of toppling over. It was.
When we looked up, we saw the top of the tower rotate. We could see from the bottom, coming up this way, and we could see looks like what the floor was in this building. But as soon as we captured that image, it was totally obscured by this huge cloud that blanketed out everything. And then the only thing we had was this tremendous rumbling roar, like huge boulders, an avalanche coming down a rocky mountainside. And then you hear this thunder and loud sounds, and the building is starting to shake and vibrate. And the mind is racing, and I'm saying, all these thoughts instantaneously going through. But there's another part of the mind that's operating too. The back part of the mind is saying, hey, stupid, wake up. That building isn't here. So we turned around and said, I think it's time to get the hell out of here.
I watched the building, the first tower come down right from my school building after I knew my brother was there.
You heard the popping, and then you just saw the tower leaning, the South Tower coming towards us, and we ran. It turned black as night. Everybody started gagging, vomiting, you know, trying to get your mask on. I put my mask on. It was full of whomever and whatever.
We watched on the screen as the first building tumbled down. And it was almost as if we were forgetful of where we were standing. It was as if we were watching it from somewhere else. It was surreal. Like, I can't even explain surreal. And as we're watching the building go down, our windows go and it goes pitch black outside. And the only way that I've ever described it was as if somebody had taken black magic marker or black Sharpie and covered all of our windows. You couldn't see.
I thought it was the end of the world because blackness covered the entire downtown Manhattan.
You could hear the sound of the upper floors what we call pancaking. And at that moment, I believed that that was the end for me.
One of the guys says, "Hey Cap, it's coming down." So I look up, and the top of the south tower tilted right over us. It appeared to be right over us. Before it went down, as it came down, it started to tilt south. It's where we were now. Like John said, it started to pancake, and it was almost in slow motion. You could almost see it going floor by floor, like poof, poof, poof. And it only took like a fraction of a second to see all this. It takes longer to tell about it. But you could actually see each floor just like slowly pounding. I remember tucking into behind the buttress and putting my arm over the guy next to me, might have been Owen, and I thought a couple things, and it was a split second. I thought, this is going to hurt, and there isn't really time to pray. And I remember my last thing was, so this is how it ends, and that was it.
Even in my best day, I wasn't that fast a runner, and with all the gear on, I wasn't going to outrun the collapse of the building. There was no anticipation of me other than that I was sure I was going to die. I was expecting a big blast of energy. When I'm thinking, in my mind, I'm thinking this building, 110-story building is collapsing in front of us. I said, I'm probably going to get blown to bits by the impact of it coming out. I felt all energy being drawn away from me. We were in some kind of void or in an area where the air was being sucked back in. There wasn't much sensation around you. I had a Scott mask on. You couldn't see anything. You couldn't hear anything. The only process that I had was the thoughts in my head. And I kind of thought that maybe this is it. Maybe I died. I don't know how long it was. It wasn't that long, but for a short period, I was alone because we all got separated, and it was a very uncomfortable feeling. Shortly after that, I heard a familiar voice. I heard somebody calling for an axe for a set of irons, and it was the captain calling Owen, and I know Owen had the irons, and I heard Owen respond. And I said, now I know I'm not alone now. I hear these guys.
We went to the North Bronx, and I remember it was pretty high, the Bronx, height-wise, looking down to the city. And we got there and went to the top of one of the buildings, and one of the towers had already collapsed. I could see the plume, and it looked so odd to me. Like, I know the city, and it just, I couldn't even believe what we were seeing.
Oh my God, you believe this is happening, man? It's down. Yeah? It just went down. The whole tower just went right down. Look at my arms, how much goosebumps are on me, dude. It exploded. It was a gigantic fucking explosion. And now I don't see the other tower. There's only one standing, isn't there? The one on the right's gone.
Our breathing was getting more raspy and more raspy and more raspy. And I remember saying to myself, you know, God, just take care of my family, my friends, and whoever else is out there. Because we were pretty convinced at that point we were going to die, because we know, especially with our training, that superheated air and a closed area does not hold oxygen very long. It didn't occur to me that we were still alive, because I really thought we were dead. And I really resigned myself to the fact that we were going to die and be found standing up, all 30 of us.
And then all of a sudden, I hear people screaming. And then I see smoke. And then I see like a fireball come up a street. And then I'm feeling wind. And when I tell you this wind was like a tornado, people were starting to hold on to I had to literally hold on to a lamppost. And I couldn't see it from where I was. So I wasn't too sure what it was. And I see this man holding on to the lamppost. I had to hold on to it too because I couldn't stand up. It was like strong wind. And then I'm saying to myself, oh my God. And everybody's screaming, run! The smoke started coming more and more. And I just kept running. And then I'm saying, oh my God, I don't want to die. What is this? And then I just kept saying my prayers. I didn't realize how strong my faith was that day.
And you could see down the side street, we just run, you could start to see the blowback from the collapse going down to my peripheral vision. The side streets, you could start to see go down. And then blackness and soot that you couldn't breathe. Normal smoke, you go up, even if it gets thick, you can breathe it for a while. couldn't breathe it at all. I was still saying the top of the building fell off. I was like, nah, it's just the top. The top came down, because my last glimpse was it tilting, and I'm thinking, the top 30 floors came off, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And the guys were telling me, this thing goes, no, the whole building came down. The whole building came down. So we're waiting. It was still pitch black outside. And we finally ventured out. It was like snowing outside. It was just white. It was a white haze, and it was eerily quiet. My handy-talkie, I hadn't heard a thing since then. I tried to get on handy-talkie and say 220 to command, 220 to, I changed stations. Nothing.
Everything was gray. The New York City firefighters who were there, whatever people were still around, vehicles, buildings, everything gray. And you had this living color as you were coming in. As you got closer and closer and closer to the scene, everything just turned into this gray, which gave it a very, very surreal appearance,
But now everything I see, there is no more Technicolor. It is gray. Everything is this ashy gray. I'm covered in it. And I walked up another block, and then I met the captain of the PAPD police precinct at World Trade Center. And he's all disheveled. His tie is off. He's got a short sleeve shirt on. He's missing his hat. His hair is all filled with dust, and he looks like a white man now. We came up with each other, and we just grabbed each other in a welcoming embrace. Tony, how are you? Vic, are you okay? Yeah, fine. So
we got outside, and you couldn't see a thing. Everything was white gray. You couldn't see but maybe 10 feet in front of you. At this point, we had so much garbage in our mouth. We was just trying to wash it out and get it off our faces and away from our eyes. And it just didn't seem like it wanted to come off. It was caked. It was so caked onto us. And it was just like a kid. When you played in mud and it dried on your skin, it just wasn't coming off. I remember her and I just looking at each other and saying, we got to get out of here. So we picked up our bags and we went outside.
Now at this point there's ash all over. We finally get to triage, and they take us in and they take us to NYU. And they treated us like we were queens.
We were talking about the end of the world. We were talking about, is this in the Bible? It was stuff that you wouldn't think you'd ever talk about in a regular conversation when you meet people. Stuff that's going through our heads is totally different, and it's weird, and it's strange, and it's very uncomfortable, it's scary, but at the same time, we were curious. People were walking like zombies. People didn't know what to do, people didn't know what to say. We were all in a daze. It was like, I can't explain to you, something you'd see in a movie, something that wasn't normal, something that no one understood. We were all confused. It's like we didn't know what to do. But this is what we had to do. We had to keep walking. We wanted to get somewhere, but we couldn't quite get there. This lady came up to me. She goes, you better pray. Like it was the end of the world. It was spooky. It was eerie. I'm saying, oh my God. Then you see people in the street, and they're kneeling down, and they're literally making the sign of the cross and praying, and I'm going, oh my God. I'm saying to people, I says, you have to get out of here. You have to get out of here. This is what I was telling them.
Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. The one building is still standing, and it is so hard to describe it. To watch this tower just, go down, and then literally, it was that fast. The windows just, and I don't know if you know that feeling or if you can imagine that. It was like a vacuum seal. And I think what started freaking us out was when we could smell like the soot coming up the elevator shafts. And we're on the 19th floor. But we stayed in the conference room and we watched. We watched. And we watched people on Water Street and Main Lane just literally jump out of their vehicles and run down the street.
I saw people covered in gray, and they were just walking with a deer in the headlights kind of look in their eyes. They all had cell phones to their ears, and the first thought I had was, don't they know what's going on? Why are they on their phones, not realizing that they were trying to contact their loved ones to tell them they were okay?
It just was the wave of gray, dusted people coming back, and then the crush of people from the city trying to find someone. Most people were walking around with dead cell phones on their ears and talking to no one. And there was a lineup over a block long to get to the payphone, because the payphones, even though there's hardly any left, the payphone still worked. So that's how people were. And I remember actually walking by and someone getting a hold of somebody and hearing that fabulous sound of happy tears, and it affected the 20 people behind them, that they all had hope, where everyone looked like zombies beforehand.
I looked at these buildings on fire, and I watched. What I saw was blue, and I remember telling my friend, I see blue. What had happened is the South Tower number 2, my building where I worked, had collapsed. But it was so incomprehensible. In fact, the entire event was so beyond one's ability to conceive such a thing, that even though the building collapsed, and I saw it collapse, and I saw the blue sky where the building had once stood, I could not process this in my brain. I could only say, I see blue.
Can anybody hear me? I'm a civilian. I'm trapped inside of one of your fire trucks underneath. I collapsed. That just happened. Stand by. There's people close to you. I can't breathe much longer. Save me. I'm in a can't truck.
And as I crawled deeper in, everything started to shake, and I got trapped. Pitch black. The stuff came in behind me, and I'm stuck in this hollow, and I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, screaming. No one heard me, nothing, and I really thought I was going to die. I thought, this is it. But I went through that horrible panic, confined space, and I was trained for confined space. I remember I prayed to God, and I wasn't a religious guy or nothing, but I guess that's the time, like, this is kind of it. Please, don't let me suffocate here. Take me quick. And somehow let my kids know that I was doing my best down here. That was like, came to my mind. And just when I said that, I mean, this is my life-changing moment while I was there, I had the gift of holding my 3 infant babies in my arms. Like, I actually, like, we're sitting here right now, naked, beautiful, my 3 kids, a boy and 2 girls, and the smell of the baby smell was on them. And that was so unique for me, because there was nothing but the horrible, putrid smell of death at Ground Zero. It was, anyone who you're going to talk to will recall, of all the things, that smell. So now I'm smelling babies and holding them and seeing them. So to me it was real, and God was with me, and I realized for the first time He doesn't come from far away. He's inside of us, and you just ask Him to be with you, and He's there. And I said, look, I'm ready to go, but if you allow me to stay, I'm making deals now, I promise to dedicate my life to serving you. Whatever that is, that was it, came out of me. Something told me that I had to go further down. I don't know why. It's the opposite reaction of where I should go. And it kind of illuminated, go this way. And I kept crawling down and feeling my way over and under and through. So I eventually made my way south, and I came up under the lobby of the Deutsche Bank building, which is one of the buildings they just took down, across the street. I have no idea how I got there. I came up through the sub-basement and opened the side door, and all the lights of Ground Zero were shining, and I just looked. I said, thank you.
We're on 57th and West Side Highway. Let us go down west and get back to you, let you know what's going on. Fort Charlie, the operations post, the command post is going to be set up on West Street. They're moving completely out to West Street. That's correct. I'm in contact with Chief Fian and Commissioner Fian, and that's where we're going to start moving out of a further collapse zone.
We got to the corner, but we had just run down, where I'd seen the debris coming. And when we got there, I think we're still deciding whether or not we should do a search or we should head to the water. A little gray there, but I knew we wanted to get over to the other side of the financial area. And with that, we felt the rumbling again. And that time, we kind of just knew that was the North Tower coming down. I think one of the guys mentioned it. That's the North Tower coming down. And we headed down that street that we were on and ducked into another building a little later than this one, and waited for the same thing, blackness, waiting for it to end. And that was just the start of it. It was stuff like that for the next, I don't know how many hours or minutes, I have no idea. It seemed like an eternity. It seemed like running from one place to another. Just debris all over the place, like snow, and quiet. Yeah, that's how the morning went.
We walked to West Street. I guess we got a block down, and you could hear the rumbling. And we ducked into a hotel. And then you could see just a cloud of black again. And people asking, what do we do? I told one lady, cover your baby up and get on the Staten Island ferry and go west. Get out of the city, don't come back. Leave as soon as you can. From what I understand, it registered as an earthquake somewhere in the United States at 3 something.
We were all in stages of shock, and Owen Carlock then suggested that if the South Tower came down, that the North Tower was going to collapse also. It was a very wise thought. I think we were in 75 West Street when the North Tower collapsed. And we knew what it was. We knew what happened. I was in shock. I was a total shock. It was my worst fear. Happened. It happened, and I was shocked.
We started moving towards where our sector was, and the ground started shaking again, and all of a sudden it sounded like train, tornado, bomb, all at once. It was just overwhelming. The second tower had just fallen, and we were running for our lives again.
Well, I got that look, and he's about ready to say something, and as soon as he opens his mouth to start to say anything, there's this tremendous snap. You could hear this pop. It's like somebody took the steel beam and just snapped it in half. And instinctively, I don't know what it was, but it's instinctive. He ran west towards the river, and I ran north up West Street. You know, I was 67 years old at that time. I could run, but I'm not very quick anymore, you know? And so as you start to run, you begin to feel heat, wind, and debris, and almost instantly you're covered in this cloud. So as that cloud begins to cover you, you put my jacket up over my head, my radial hand, I'm holding the jacket up, and I'm trying to keep it tight around me, in some ways trying to use it as a filter, because this cloud that we're looking into is not one of those clouds that you fly through. But I'm still getting blown. But I'm not being pushed with this tremendous downbeat, because those winds probably are up to around 120 miles an hour or more. I know stories of people that I've talked with that say they were picked up and blown across West Street and thrown into a portion of the World Financial Center. Well, when they saw the second tower collapse, my daughter knew right away that I was dead, because that's who Daddy is. He's staying there to get his job done.
And I was about 30 yards, maybe less, from the building. Did I hear the building start to crack? And I looked up, and I saw it. I saw it starting to come down. And I started to run. And I said, I can't outrun this thing. You know, I'm thinking in my mind, of course, I can't outrun this thing. And I dump on myself, jump underneath the fire truck that was there. I had no anticipation that I would survive. I had no thoughts that this building falls down in that fire trick. I'm not surviving. There's no possibility. I'm going to get crushed anyway, you know. So of course it didn't surprise me when I was unconscious. And then it came to. At first, I thought I was dead. It was a very spiritual experience. Rather beautiful. It was just light. Clear, bright, white.
When the building collapsed, my husband collapsed on his job because he knew my routine. He knew that there was no way that was the building, the timing that I would be alive.
And I just kept thinking that I'm gonna die alone with not my family not around me. That was probably the worst, to think that I couldn't even say goodbye to anybody, or where am I gonna go? What's gonna happen to me? It was an awful feeling.
Everyone's like screaming when the second tower starts coming down, and we're at the conference room and the second tower starts coming down, and all of a sudden that's when like everyone starts crying, I want to get out of here, I have to go home, I have to call my parents, nobody knows where I am, I just need to go. And that's when it was like, okay everybody, there isn't anything we can do except for think about moving forward, and this is what we're going to do.
Coincidence, whatever, but it was, again, it couldn't have been more than a minute that I had been home and like looking at this. It was 10:28 on my cable box, and that's when one came down. And when it was about halfway down is when everything kind of dawned on me, and I kind of like went, wait a minute, where's Tower 2? And then, you know, one crumbled, and that's when I completely lost it, because the only thing that I could conceive of was that I ran away and everybody I know is dead.
I noticed on the TV that the towers had collapsed. And that was the first time I knew that the second tower was hit and that they collapsed. And at that moment, I figured there were at least 10,000 people who were dead. At least 10,000 people, probably more.
And the only thing everybody did basically was look at the TV and watch the towers come down. And that was, I think, the worst thing. I didn't even know they fell. I didn't even know they fell.
It really shook my confidence was the fact that I didn't think the building was collapsing. I really didn't give any thought to the building collapsing. I know there was staff that knew the building was going to collapse, that they realized that this can only survive so long before it collapsed, and we're fighting time here. We were in such a lucky window to be where we were when that happened, when the South Tower collapsed. And the South Tower collapsed first, even though it was hit second, because it was hit lower. So there was more weight above it than the North Tower. The North Tower was hit higher. Most of the survivors from the South Tower had self-evacuated because they saw the North Tower get hit, and they were there for the '93 bombing, so they knew to get the heck out. The people in the North Tower that survived were below the impact point, so they got out. The firemen in the South Tower did not survive because theirs collapsed right away.
I'm not an engineer, but I've seen enough of the reports and stuff. And it's not minutes. I mean, you're talking a long time that the buildings withstood two fully laden aircraft filled with jet fuel. What we described it was like a blowtorch effect. You had elevator shafts going up 110 stories with fuel dropping down, and so you have basically a blast furnace going on. The impact of the aircraft, that's like a bomb going off, the jet fuel burning at ridiculous temperatures. And we saw the steel down there. I mean, it was warped and bent and...
I looked to the left and the skyline was all smoke and dust, and it was a black smoke I've never seen before. I looked to the right and there was the Statue of Liberty, and for some reason that comforted me. That was the last thing I remember.
As I was driving north on the Jersey Turnpike, I grabbed my camera and I was videotaping the skyline, because the first thing that hit me was that the towers weren't there. Since I was a kid and driving up North Jersey with my parents to visit relatives, the Twin Towers were always there. And all of a sudden they're gone, just gone. When I first saw the destruction, I couldn't believe it. It was just blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks of girders and steel and concrete, pulverized glass. There were fires everywhere, poking up through the steel. The smoke was so thick with not only toxic smoke but glass particulate, and it would actually shine as it was floating by. And at that point, we didn't have masks.
The devastation was just, it's not something you expect to see in your hometown, let alone this country.
I did come in on that gray, and that was the predominant thing for me. It was featureless, it was lifeless, it was hollow. It was like a post-apocalyptic movie.
At the World Trade Center, there was nothing. Everything was pulverized. There was pieces of steel, there was pulverized white stuff that was gooey. And the way you found stuff is you picked your hands through it and you smelled it to see if it smelled like rotten meat. And if it did, you'd put it in a red bag and you'd send it to get checked, to get DNA checked, you know, to see if it was somebody or not. And where I wasn't pulling out legs or anything like that. I was picking out parts of goo that was surrounded with like white chalk. There was nothing there. There was no telephones, which always survive. There was no desks. There was no glass. Everything was pulverized. It was strange. It's hard to explain to people what it actually looked like. And there was just piles of it, and mounds of it, and acres of it, and depth. Yeah.
Was there once a time when the world was young and unafraid, when we sang of wondrous dreams and were proud of all we made? Was there once a time when the world was wide and true and real, when each word was fresh and free, and each life was held and healed? Was there once a time when the song came lightly to my lips, and the music danced and played in a kind of trance, kinship, once upon that time? If the world breathed heavy on my back, I could find the strength to sing. I would find a right lyric.
And unbeknownst to me at that time, one of the fatalities that occurred by somebody jumping was Father Michael Judd, who was the chaplain of the Fire Department of New York. Sometime later, I would find his helmet, carry that with me on my egress.
When I had seen some of the pictures come through of some of the folks who had been injured, I saw that one of them was Mike, and he didn't look good. And it turned out that Mike had died giving last rites to a firefighter who had been hit by a jumper. And he was hit by a jumper. So Mike was carried to St. Paul's Chapel, and they laid him on the altar. And I think he's a saint. I really miss him.
He was the nicest, most kind, loving person in the world. You know, he did everything for my brother and I. He was always around. I know his calling in life was to be a firefighter, but he loved being a dad.
People die when they're supposed to. I can't even imagine seeing him grow old. I can't imagine him becoming feeble. I mean, we were as close as you could possibly be. He had a calling. I mean, it's what was supposed to happen. He died a hero.
We were complete opposites, 5 years apart, but we were best friends. This is gonna be hard. Donna was like the big sister who looked out for me. That day, she started work at 9, I started at 8:30, so in my eyes, she wasn't even there yet. She worked on the 103rd floor. I was on the 92nd floor. I figured, okay, it's okay, we didn't hear from her yet. We'll hear from her later. So now days have gone by, a week, and in my heart I knew that there was no way. They never found anything of Donna. So we had a service for her. I could not sleep. I can't believe somebody could cry for a year every night. I had guilt that I was out and she wasn't.
You can't measure grief. You can't say my pain is worse than your pain. You can't measure someone's loss. You can't measure someone's love.
Got to the point where I had to pick and choose which funerals I was going to go to. I just couldn't go to all of them I wanted to go to.
I went to 27 different funerals for the guys, and they were, each one of them was gut-wrenching, you know? And you think you get callous and immune to it, but you don't. I know I thought I cried every tear out. You know, I said, how am I still crying for these guys? Like, I didn't think there was anything left.
I lost 23 colleagues. Of those 23, in the ensuing period, even up to a year later, as they identified remains, a memorial service would be held.
I know there's some great stories about a lieutenant, I think one of the Harlem engines who was caught in the first collapse, and he told his company to evacuate, and the second collapse killed him. Or the story of the lieutenant from 106, who thought he was missing a guy after the first collapse, and went to get him, and he was killed, and the guy, it turned up he was okay, and his company survived. This guy was out looking for him. Fantastic stories of bravery that just, you know, my whole company I used to work in as a fireman was killed. Fireman that, when I worked in Queens, he kept asking me, where's a busy company he can go to? and I steered him to a busy company. He was killed working in that company. Pete Langone was from Roslyn, next town over. He had worked in my company. He was killed. Billy McGovern, I worked with him. He was a captain across the floor from me when I was a lieutenant. I worked with him for years.
Our department manager was 8 months pregnant. For the longest time, she tried to have a baby, and finally she was pregnant. Never made it out. A woman who, it was her last day there, she was accepting a job somewhere else. Never made it out. It's just one story after another that is horrible.
People, and I think Americans, can get through almost anything. There's really not much that you can, the spirit that people have when things are down, no matter how dark and you might feel things are down, just persevere. Things will get better.
But I think the majority of people who did what they did and answered the call on 9/11 at Ground Zero, I think they're a great tribute to America. They are the American tribute. Like, that's who we are.
That was one of the hardest parts too, dealing with the aftermath. Seeing the newspaper the next morning, seeing all those pictures, seeing a photo of someone I used to work with years back, someone that worked up at Cantor Fitzgerald, seeing the pictures, and I said, oh my God. Like for a few seconds there, I forgot what happened. Then I seen the paper and I said, oh my God, I'm looking. And I'm saying, Jesus, this really happens? I don't understand it. This really happened. It's horrible. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare for me for a long time afterwards. Dealing with the fact that that I survived and they didn't. It's a very hard thing to deal with. And I said to myself, why? You know, you wonder why. You're grateful. You're thanking God you survived, but why did those people go when I survived? And you have to deal with the guilt. And it's not an easy thing.
For a long time, I held on to a lot of guilt of the decisions I made that day, you know, life and death decisions, along with my partner, Jen.
I've thought I wish I was killed. Absolutely. I've thought that. I wish I was one of them. I'm glad I'm not one of them. I wish I was one of them. I should have been one of them. Maybe I didn't do my job enough. Maybe I should have went to the South Tower earlier.
I thought I was going to die, and I didn't. And I'm still dealing with that every day. It's a good thing. I'm glad I'm here, and I'm trying to be productive with my life, and I think I am. And I know that I was spared that day for a reason. It wasn't my time. They didn't get me then, and they're not going to get me now.
It is by no means my doing to being here today, and I attribute the fact that God has called me for, or spared me for bigger and better things. You can't live your life in fear. And so I live every day as if it were my last day. Not all of self and none of thee. It's all of thee and self will do.
This is history. This was history. We have fighting in Ireland, and we have fighting in Israel, and we have fighting in Libya and all over, but it's not home. We don't live with that fear of going outside the door and something getting blown up or attacked. And that changed the face of history. Now it has come home, and it's hit us very hard in the face. That day or that week, those months, I saw the root of what this country was founded on. The goodness, the compassion, the volunteering. And I was so very proud. Amongst all the tragedy, I was so, so proud to be part of this. I learned that things weren't quite as important. I didn't need the biggest house. I didn't need the newest car. I really opened my eyes up to what was important in life. I just Wish people would take the time to stop in their busy lives and look at what they have and be thankful for what they have, because there's always somebody worse, and we have so much here.
You know, love your family, hug them 10 times more than you ever did, because the real things that matter are those things. I made millions in my aerospace life. I traveled the world. I stayed at the best hotels, first class, you name it, and drove the most beautiful cars. And I thought that's what life was about. That's what we're striving for, right? To get as much as we can. Now, Monica and I, we struggle to make ends meet, but there's a love that God's blessed us with it's so far beyond anything you can dream of. But it's because you've followed through those footsteps of that tragedy, and you do realize what's important, and then God gives you that gift.
There is a huge lesson that was learned working at Ground Zero, and that was America coming together as one group.
But we as Americans, we cannot forget what we consist of and what we still have. And we forget that, we're going to be forgotten, and we're going to forget what we're about. And we're not going to have that position anymore. And we still do, and we still can even more. And that's something that I think we all worry about and we all are concerned about, especially if you have kids, or if you don't have kids, you're still here surviving.
Thankfulness, twice a day. Once in the morning for having permission to get through the night. And then at night, if you remember the movie Saving Private Ryan, the last scene, there's a group of people, looks like a family unit, walking down a tree-lined lane. And when they walk out, they come into a cemetery. And the older gentleman separates himself and goes up to a tomb. He asks one question. Did I do okay? That's my question at night. And then I ask for permission to be able to wake up the next morning.
9/11 has given America, it's a wake-up call to say that there are enemies among us, and they need to be identified.
The World Trade Center was an event that the enormity of which was unprecedented. The loss of life was incomprehensible, and it was an event given the media and the coverage that brought the entire world together. We were all focused on this event, and I believe that we should remain focused.
My message would be that, that hopefully that we can all learn from this, and that somehow, through some miracle, that we can all live in peace. It's kind of unreal, the whole experience. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and think, just didn't really happen. But I know it did. And as I stated, I'm glad I'm here, and I'm very happy that I was given the opportunity to do my job with very good men, and that we did our job, and I'm very proud of that.
God allows us to do this, and that's why our money says, "In God we trust," and everything this nation is from its founders. I think once we turn our back collectively on God, God forbid He turns His back on us, because without Him, this nation and our way of life is nothing. And again, this is no particular religion. This is just knowing that there's something so much grander and more magnificent than we could ever hope to be. And once we think we're the tops, we're going to the bottom.
And so I am deeply thankful to have been part of this experience, to relate it to others, to say that there is always hope, and that through adversity we can become much more satisfied in our lives and appreciate all of the wonderful freedoms and privileges in this great United States.
To whom much is given, much is required. Those men and women, all of us have been given so much, even if it's not tangible. We have been given a home or a place called America, a land of freedom, and it's worth fighting for. It's worth fighting for.